Boy, we should be in the television business, maybe the media business.
But I see, I'm with Ross Video, not audio, so I can't take responsibility for anything audio. Let me get there should be a clicker up here somewhere, right?
Let's see. Yeah, here you go.
All right, great. All right, so yeah, I'm Chris Lennon from Ross Video, and we're here to solve all your problems with live stream distribution. Whether you knew there were problems or not, I hope by the time we get done here, we'll open your eyes, maybe terrify you in some ways, of some of the issues that are in front of us and in front of large media players in general today. So we're all painfully aware, right, of the fact that the streaming area is incredibly dynamic. It's literally changing day by day. What players are involved, and the number of variables as we enhance things in terms of picture formats, picture quality, that sort of thing is becoming challenging, let's just say.
I call it a friggin' nightmare, but
I'm trying to be nice, but that's why you're up here. Stan will be our voice of reason. The main reason that I actually brought Stan up here, other than he's a great speaker, is I sat in on a session that Stan did at IBC a few weeks ago, that the IABM put together that had some really eye-opening stats about live stream distribution. And Stan's been quite involved in our activities in the SMPTE RIS OSA group on live stream distribution. So it just made perfect sense to bring him up here, and we'll just kind of kick off with.
Let's make sure people understand what RIS is. Rapid Industry Solutions.
Sorry.
Or just explaining what RIS is. You're using all these acronyms.
Yeah. Sorry. We're all so guilty of this industry of alphabet soup. So RIS OSA within SMPTE is the Rapid Industry Solutions Open Services Alliance group. And so what this is, the key is rapid, right? The R is rapid, trying to come up with solutions in a hurry. This is not authoring standards necessarily. And really what we're doing in this area for live stream distribution is simply trying to establish some best practices for media organizations to try to clean this up a little bit. We think, trying to standardize all this is probably a bridge too far, at least today. So let's pick a target that we think is accomplishable and realistic. And so that's what RIS OSA is. It's been around for about 5 years now and has tackled a whole variety of topics. All the common thread is around services and enabling services to be able to be used to accomplish things in more of an automated fashion than we've been able to before. And believe it or not, it's not a stretch that we get deep enough in the slides here. You'll see why this actually applies. So shall we dig into some eye-opening charts?
Let's get into some deep stuff here, which of course was just covered on the last panel.
Yeah, they kind of took our thunder here, but we could do a little deeper dive on this. But this actually, the first one is quite surprising. So this is viewing of various services on your living room television, right? This is not on mobile platforms or anything else like that. This is living room viewership. And you want to speak to this, Stan, and maybe why there's an aberration here?
Well, yeah, and we have a look here. We can see that the NBC's up top there in August and YouTube second. Let's go to the next slide. So the next slide is the months before. Nielsen has a great session online here where you can just click on the month and away you go. And you can see YouTube's on top. Obviously, with the Olympics, NBC stole the show literally. Yep. It was a great session that was put on by NBC. But I think the surprise from my point of view, and that's why it probably came up in the last panel as well, it's like YouTube on the big screen. It's like, how do I find anything to begin with? But
And how the heck did it become number one? Yeah. I mean, have we been sleeping? I feel like I've been sleeping. That it's now the number one thing that people are watching.
And I certainly consider that a surprise. But when you look at that, now that just brings in the bigger discussion about streaming and the important topic that we're on about.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you'll see kind of a lot of familiar names, a lot of them who have been around for a long time, some more recent ones, but, this actually gets more interesting as you dig into it a little bit more. Stan, we pulled this out of your deck as well on the Disney Plus subscribers and kind of how that has trended since since the pandemic,
Well,
right?
I think when people looked at this, back at the end of last year, they thought, oh, it's in a decline. We're all dying, whatever. And I think a good point did come up with actually Jeff from Abbott. He brought this up too at the HPA thing, and he says streaming's really killed the industry. Streaming's going to save the industry. So I thought that was a great point where that fits in that realm. And part of the decline at the end of last year, people were suddenly worried, but you can see now it's creeping up.
Yeah, I could say it's normalizing. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, and I think when we look at the number of fast channels up there, this really is a surprise. And this is specific, just here in the U.S. as well. And I was just blown away when I looked at that number.
Yeah. Does everybody else find this as shocking as I do that we have, and this is as of May, so I'll bet we're close to 2,000 fast channels in the U.S. alone right now available. I found that just completely shocking. But again, it speaks to the scope and nature of the problem that the people who provide the content for these fast channels are facing right now.
Yeah. And, we can see by the blue bar there, our analysts at IABM, they like to look at everything in every different direction. So that, of course, they put up growth rates, which gives us a good indication. Obviously, when it came on board, it was pretty steep. Growth rate is slowing down, and we expect to see that. And it's like anything else in our business. We're going to see a bunch of them just suddenly disappear, and, the hardy will survive.
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say we're gonna level off in the 2,000 range. So it's not like we're gonna drop back down to 1,500 or anything. This is a problem, or shouldn't say problem, should say challenge that we have to face, and we have to make it easier to deal with the fact that we're getting content out to such a vast number of destinations now. This is kind of more of the same in a lot of ways, but again, showing YouTube's rate of adoption, kind of leveling off, but then growing as this year has gone along.
Yeah, but you have to remember, again, it's like anything else. You put something on a spectrum analyzer, you can twiddle the knobs and get anything you want out of it. And if you look at the numbers there, it's an expanded scale. So it's only a 0.5% in between each other. So it's just a reasonable, it's a growth rate. That's it.
Yep. And again, I don't want to be kind of doom and gloom here, but again, it's just to point out the shifting landscape of streaming. This is just since March of this year. Here are some of the bigger things that have taken place in the streaming landscape. And you tend to lose track that, if we didn't have the dates on there, I might have thought, oh, this is over the last like 2 or 3 years. No, this is over the last, 7, 8 months.
That's right. And, it's changing quickly. And I think we all know that. So, but again, it's an important thing to point out.
So really what we're here to kind of talk about is, we've got this real challenge out there with the fact that if I'm a large media company, if I'm like an NBCU, Disney, somebody like that who has a ton of content that goes out to viewers over a lot of different platforms, it's at the point now where it's really unmanageable. It has been dealt to this point in large part manually. But when you get to this many destinations and so many variables among those destinations, I think dealing with it manually is getting to the point of pretty much being impossible.
Absolutely. And we ran into this way back in the day when people started doing catch up on cable systems. I recall being in the lab there at ABC one time, and Mike was telling, oh yeah, we need to spin like 300-400 different, variants of the same thing for catch up. And that was back in the cable. You can imagine what it's like now.
Yeah, it's, I think for anybody who provides even a moderate amount of content, it's in the hundreds of different variants that they're having to come up with. So yeah, it's a challenge. Can we put the genie back in the bottle? I think we probably can't. That it's probably gone to a certain point now where we just have to deal with the situation that we've got, and maybe we can put some guardrails on it. Is maybe the best way I would characterize it. So this was an example. So one of the organizations that brought this challenge to our attention was Bloomberg Television, who, big organization, but not the biggest, not in the scale of some of the other ones we've talked about. But this was kind of interesting that they said, well, let's ask GPT-4, how can I watch Bloomberg Television? So here's just the answers that ChatGPT brings up for you. The thing is, like most answers we get from AI, it's actually way more involved than that, and there's a ton more of ways you can get it. But this is, again, just a microcosm, right? So Bloomberg, here's just a small array of how you can get it. And, how are they dealing with this today? So if I'm a content producer, a content provider, I'll start the conversation with one of these streaming providers and say, okay, I can give you the content in one of, in this case, let's say 6 different formats. And then they'll say, oh, that's great. Well, there's like 4 formats that I can take them in, and 2 of them you don't even know about. You haven't given me in your list, that's not even able to be provided. So it's by and large a email, phone, text-based type of conversation today, and a negotiation of what could you provide? What do I need? Can we find a middle ground? This is a real problem if I'm standing up new modes of distribution almost daily, right? Again, this is unsustainable. This is why, again, the people who negotiate these deals say, okay, I've got the deal. I want to have this distribution stood up, tomorrow. And it's not possible today with this sort of a thing. So, how can we deal with that? I think there's quite a bit of complexity that's been introduced into this, unnecessarily, that perhaps we can trim some of that down. Like I said, time to market absolutely has to be sped up, because there's a disconnect between the expectations of the people who are signing these agreements and then the engineering side being able to say, well, it's going to take me a week to stand this up. I can't have it up tomorrow. Management overhead, again, major problem with the complexity that we've got here, in being able to get high quality content out. And really overall, I think there's a huge opportunity to minimize one-offs where, we're saying, okay, yeah, we can give you everything you want here without looking at the big picture. What problems is this going to create for management of this sort of thing down the road? So, all kinds of different things, different aspects to this. How am I delivering it? And we'll talk about that in a minute. There's a couple of major ways that content is distributed to these streaming providers. But you've got, every protocol under the sun seems like is being used here. People want, every different video and audio format they can possibly get. Security, major issue. And
I'm going to jump in here because I was really surprised to hear that, because someone on our subcommittee said, just tell me what CDN it's going to, and I can hack in and get the content. And, that's referred to in this day and age as CDN leeching, but people have typically been looking at stealing things after the CDN or way before it even gets to the CDN. So this has actually become a stronger, element that's brushed under the carpet. And actually when I started doing a little deeper dive on some of this, and I started to talk to some CDNs on this that will remain nameless, they went, oh yeah, that's an issue. But it's just quietly brushed under the carpet. So, I mean, it's like when you look at this, when the people that are stealing content, when they get into this area, and this is particularly important when we're talking about live.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this was actually stunning. And I would say you don't even have to be a hacker shockingly, to do this. You just have to be somebody with a little bit of knowledge, and you can get at pretty much any live stream from any content owner to any distributor. It's a gaping hole, and really this group that we've formed that's been working on this problem has pivoted really quickly from just let's make this less complicated to, well, number one, let's secure this. Because if we don't secure this, this is like the number one problem that we've got here.
And I want to make something clear. This has nothing to do with the secure link, whether or not you're running SRT or RIST or Zixi or whatever. It's not that issue.
No.
It's like it got into the CDN secure.
Yeah. So again, kind of a dirty little secret that I think opened a lot of our eyes. The good news is we're working on it and trying to identify what all the threats are and how do we mitigate them. As an industry, I don't think we need to invent anything necessarily. I think there are tools out there to help us, close these gaps, but they're not being used. And so, it's just a matter of leveraging already existing stuff that's out there.
And of course, the focus has been on with security has been focused on content mainly, or it's been focused on how content gets from A to B. It's not been focused in this area. And on the security side, we can talk about all sorts of areas it's not been focused on, like control and monitoring, et cetera, et cetera.
So, I mentioned earlier, one of the points of complication is, multiple ways of getting this content from the content owners down to the streaming providers. So the most obvious one you might think about is just point to point where, hey, I'm a provider. I've got some content. I want to get it to a streaming provider here. And it's just a point to point thing. It's like, okay, here I do a negotiation. Here's how I can get it to you. I send it straight to you. Fairly straightforward. And there could be, obviously there's, multiples of these. So that's really the point-to-point landscape. Even in that landscape, though, here's just a view of some of the variables that you've got, right? So if I'm point-to-point, then I need to say, okay, well, what protocol are we going to use to send the content? And this is not a comprehensive list, but here's just a few that could be used. How am I going to distribute it? That sort of thing. It's kind of a nightmare. Then you've got another form of distribution that we call origin distribution, which is more the CDN based model, where I've got, in this case, I'm providing the content as a provider to a CDN, and then it's going from there out to a variety of consumers. And this is where Stan was referring to there being a significant security hole in that. You might think that was simpler since you're going through a CDN. I'm told that in most cases it's actually more complex than point to point. So again, in the protocol area, you've got, kind of, everything in the kitchen sink, in there. Most cases when you're doing this origin-based distribution, I'm talking about, distributing to, OTT platforms, fast channels, sending things to the Samsungs and the LGs of the world. That sort of thing this is quite a common mode of distribution for that. And then, of course, you've got the basic stuff, right? You've got everybody wants a different format. Is this HD? Is it 4K? Is it 8K? Is it HDR? Is it, what frame rate am I doing? This all might sound like basic stuff to all of us, but it's not. This is all points of negotiation when I'm sending these things out.
Now, this was a cool when Loic from Bloomberg put this drawing up. We dove in, we went deep, but can you just imagine it? Go ahead, Chris.
This is, and I asked, is this just something to make it look really bad? And he said, no, this is actually our architecture for live stream distribution at Bloomberg. So, I'll spare you blowing it up, but just, hopefully you can all be shocked, at the complexity that is in there right now. And to think that, they're not able to do this, with really any degree of automation. This is all managed by people, spreadsheets, manual processes. So you can see why this is just completely unmanageable going forward.
A little error prone.
Just a little. So yeah, major problem out there. So like I said, we pivoted very quickly in this group when we identified that there were some huge security holes here. We're like, okay, that's, if we're going to triage here, that's the number one thing we need to focus on. And so, again, in best case scenarios, we have some really tight configurations that are set up both at the sending and receiving side of things that are helping us with this. However, like I said, with the origin-based distribution with CDNs, it's rarely secured at all. It's kind of wide open to people who know what we're doing. But there are things that we can do to try to help this. And we'll dive into that a little bit. What we've ended up doing, we kind of liked something that was done by a previous group in SMPTE that worked actually on securing PTP, took an approach of creating what they called threat cards. And they did this and they did a report about it. And we're like, this is a nice, easy way to encapsulate different types of threats that are in there. And some of the details behind them. And then how do I deal with them in like a nice little cube here that we can put the problem and encapsulate it rather than somebody having to read like a white paper about each of these types of things. So, this is just a few of the threat models we've come up with. So, the first one was that the content producer or provider, has been intruded. And, you'll see kind of on this card that we go through, what type of category is this? What is the real nature of the threat? What impact does it have on my operation, et cetera, all the way down to how do I detect it? How effective are the detection methods that are out there? And, then ultimately, how do I mitigate this threat? So what we've ended up doing is say, okay, we're going to use this model for every type of threat that we can identify. And this makes it really simple, I think, for all of us to get our arms around it and then try to come up with solutions.
And I do look at this as well. It's, you can look on a forward basis and say, how do we make sure, where are we heading? Let's not avoid these issues. But the point is we're deep into this now. We have to be reactive.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, you can't put the genie back into the bottle, but we can maybe contain the genie a little bit. So I'm not going to go in detail over these threat cards. If you're really interested in the detail, you can get involved in RISOSA and we'd love to have you there. But so again, there's things like manifest tampering, there's denial of service protocols, and again, there's many, many more that we're working on. So really to boil it down and wrap it up,
we got 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, great. We can.
Yeah, we'll do that. I want to bring up another point here I don't think we have a slide for this. You've got a bunch here. One of the other thing that's coming up, particularly with live streaming, when we're distributing things, is everybody wants to have multicam now. They want to be able to control the camera they're watching at home. So now all of a sudden the CDN has to deal with that. What's the camera feed? What does it look like? How does it go back up to the CDN to say, I want to watch this camera? How do I distribute this? So that's one aspect. The other thing we haven't even touched on is metadata.
Yeah.
So
one thing at a time, Stan.
One thing at a time.
So, I'd love to have questions here. And while we're doing the questions, up on here is if you want to get involved in this, if this resonates, if you're a part of this scenario and understand the nature of this problem, we'd love to have you contribute and help be part of setting some best practices around us. So,
and Ryan's right here in the crowd, so he can answer the question. No question.
Well, I know we haven't answered all of them, but again, hopefully we've opened your eyes. I hope you're a little bit scared like I am of what this situation looks like. If this resonates, know that there's a group out there that's actually working on trying to solve for this, and hopefully we can come back here in the future and talk about all the great solutions we've come up with.
Well, this has to be twofold. It's one thing for the group to come up with the solution. It's another thing for the end users to be dealing with it to make sure that they've accepted it and come up with standard practice. Again, we're not trying to come up with standards that solve everything. We're trying to come up with standard practice and solutions on several of these issues. And that I think I kind of look at it from the point of view of that's what the industry needs, particularly when you looked at those charts, the number of streaming channels going up and where that's heading. The last panel was all about color and all the rogue stuff that we see on all the services. I can't even imagine bringing this in.
Yeah. So again, love to have you involved. Thanks everybody for attending, and feel free to hit up any of us with any questions as we go forward.
Chris Lennon and Stan Moot, thank you very much.